on free will makes you much more forgiving of a lot of this stuff.
Yes.
Because you see just, everyone is an open system. No one authored themselves. No
Right.
one created themselves. No one can directly regulate the effect of every influence that they had or didn't have. It's like you are the totality of what brought you here. I mean, the universe has sort of just pushed you to this point in time, and the only thing you've got is your brain and its states, and that is based on your genes and the totality of environmental influences you as a system have had working on you up until this moment. And so the next words that come out of your mouth are part of that process. Now, some people find this to be a frankly demoralizing picture. Right? They think, well, okay, well, you're telling me I'm just a robot, but you're a robot that is open, continuously open to influence of kind of internally based on its own processes. I mean, there's top-down control of the executive function in the brain to your emotional life, say, and you're continually open to the influences of culture, right? The culture is this operating system that you're interacting with in each moment, and whatever's getting in can change you in radical ways very quickly. I mean, there's no telling how much you can change on the basis of one new idea coming your way.
The feeling of self depends on there being at the same time a contrast, the feeling of other. The self has a certain sensation of being in control of life to some extent through voluntary action. The will seems to have a certain freedom. And yet, on the other hand, there are limits to that. And it seems in the end, life sweeps us away, and we are overwhelmed by the involuntary. And yet, the voluntary keeps popping up. New voluntaries come into the world with every baby. So you see, you couldn't have the experience you call being a voluntarily acting self without the contrast of the involuntary happening. Now, do you want to be without the involuntary happening? You want to get rid of that? All right. If you get rid of it, you won't have the experience of the voluntary self. Or would you like to turn it the other way around? Would you like to have the experience of no voluntary self? And on the other hand, everything just happens? Well, then you say, well, I'm not sure about that. Because then I would feel at first that I was floating. See, that I had no further responsibilities, that I was just walking on air. And we do get that feeling sometimes. If you take the ideas of determinism and fatalism to their final conclusion, you do have that sense of freedom from all responsibility, freedom from worry and care. And you float along for a while, but it wears off. You don't somehow seem to be able to follow out that philosophy consistently, especially if you have children. And somehow society begins to push on you to be responsible, as it pushes on children to be responsible. And so this nagging duality keeps coming back. That I cannot realize the nice irresponsible condition of involuntary behavior unless I have the contrast of the possibility of the voluntary, and vice versa. Now, what does that mean? Obviously, it means that these two aspects or sides of our experience, which we can call the voluntary and the involuntary, the knower and the known, the subject and the object, the self and the other, although appearing to be two, are indeed one. Because you can't have one without the other. And when that state of affairs arises, you know at once that there's a conspiracy. that two things which look as different can be are for that very reason the same. Now, you can detect even under those actions of yours which you call voluntary, the voluntary movement of the muscles or of the mind, that there are processes which are not voluntary. You do not will your blood to circulate. You do not control by intention the synapses in your nervous system, and yet you would be incapable of any voluntary action unless those involuntary processes were going on. So you see these two things go together. And you begin to realize something which is rather difficult to describe, that what you call your experience is a due happening. We don't have good words for this. We have some words which have this sort of sense, like the word cleave, which means to stick together or to hold together, and also to split. And the word sacer in Latin means holy and accursed. And so I would like to propose we should find some word for a due happening.